The scene of today's gospel, which is from the Gospel of John, chapter 6, verses 22 to 29, is immediately after Jesus has fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish, in which 12 baskets are gathered. The people have had their fill, they have been satisfied, and now they continue to look for Jesus, but their looking is a very superficial looking. They look for Jesus only to satisfy their physical hunger. As Jesus does often in the Gospel of John, he takes people from the surface level to the higher level where he wants them to be. And so invites the people who look for him for physical bread to be concerned about the spiritual bread which also he can give them. The people at this stage are open because their stomachs have been filled, and so they are willing to Jesus and ask Jesus what they must do in order to obtain that spiritual bread. Jesus responds by telling them that they must constantly endeavor to do God's will. And then they ask him, what does it mean that they must constantly endeavor to do God's will, and how do they find out about what God's will is for them? Jesus responds by telling them, this is the way that they will find God's will. They have to do whatever is required of them to the best of their ability in every single situation. After they have done all that is required of them, they turn to the Lord and ask the Lord to do what remains. They will not remain undone what they could do. They will not expect the Lord to do for them what they can and what they must do. They will push and pull and do whatever is required to the best of their ability. After they have done that, and only after they have done that, they turn to the Lord and ask the Lord to complete what remains to be done. To do God's will means they will not be concerned about the result of the action, because the result of the action will be according to God's will. If they accept the result of the action, no matter what it might be, after having done all that is required of them, that what happens is God's will. And this is what Jesus said in the last verse of the gospel text of today, that he has shown them in his own life, through his words and through his actions and through the kind of person that he is, what it means to do God's will. It means feeding the 5,000. It means reaching out to them in love, and it means accepting whatever happens after that as God's will. To find God's will in our lives is not a very difficult task, or not as difficult as we might think. Like Jesus asked the people of his time, he is asking us today to complete whatever we have to do. To focus our attention on the action at hand, not to worry too much about the result, not to be obsessed with the future, but to focus on the now, to focus on the present, to focus on our doing and on our being. And once we have done that, we leave what remains undone in God's capable hands, and we accept the result of what happens as God's will. Will you, in imitation of Jesus, continue to do God's will today?